Hello everyone, and welcome to another time on Instagram with our dyslexia stories. I'm happy to be here today. Thank you for joining. Hi everyone. I am Dr. Tikolo. I know you like to call me Dr. AD. It's nice to be here today with everyone. Thank you for joining. You know, we like to do this every Friday. We're trying to do this every Friday. Hi. Priska Chinaya, nice to see you. Thank you for joining. Today is an exciting time. We're going to be talking with someone really interesting. But before we do that, let me tell you a little bit about what we're trying to do on Instagram. So every Friday, or thereabouts every 2 Fridays, we will be talking about dyslexia. We would be discussing, or we've always been discussing, things around dyslexia, whether your experiences or things that will help with people that have dyslexia, or intervention, support to people's stories. We'll just be discussing generally about dyslexia. I'm happy to be here again. I'm Dr. Adrian Tikolo. As you know, I work with Dyslexia Nigeria. In October, we went Inside Out, and we started this campaign that, we called Inside Out with Dyslexia. And with this campaign, we're trying to bring everything about dyslexia from the inside out. A lot of people have internalized the problems they've had with dyslexia. We want this opportunity to let people talk about the experiences with dyslexia, so that other people can understand what the challenges can be like, but also the strengths. I don't know if you can see my t-shirt, but you can see going inside out for dyslexia. That's what that is about. Hi. Thank you for joining. Today I have someone really interesting, and I can't wait to talk with him. I'm sure he will join us really soon when I can introduce him. But in the meantime, how has your week been so far? I hope you've had an awesome time. More people are joining. Awesome. Thank you for joining. It's good to see you. Yes, I'm sure you're used to seeing some other face here. But today, yes, I have to hold the steering wheel. Like I said, we'll be talking about dyslexia. Dyslexia is a language processing issue. It manifests as a difficulty with learning to read, write, and spell. But the thing about dyslexia is not just that it's a difficulty, because we usually highlight the difficulty, but it also comes with huge strengths. And people with dyslexia are very good at other things. They're good at communicating, they're good at visualizing, they're good at seeing the bigger picture, problem solving. We usually talk about, hi Timmy, thank you. We usually talk about, dyslexia, and we usually talk about the difficulties, but it also comes with huge strengths. And the reason why we talk about the difficulties is so that we can address dyslexia early and allow the potentials of these people to come to the fore. It's like, when you have gold, but then you have mud all over the gold. We need to scrape the mud away so that then you can shine bright, and the brightness and the glistering effect, of gold can really come forth. So I can't wait to talk about dyslexia. I can't wait to talk with this very interesting man today. I can't wait for him to share his experience with all of us, so that we can see the damage that we're doing when we don't address dyslexia, when we don't recognize it, and when we leave people to struggle without support. I'm excited at what we're doing at Dyslexia Nigeria, honestly, because it's huge work. And we're hoping that more and more people can know about dyslexia and can help us raise awareness. Hi everyone, thank you for joining. We're still waiting for our guest, and I'm sure he's going to join us really soon. I'm sure he's going to join us very shortly. Yes, I can't wait to speak with him. But like I was saying, dyslexia is a specific learning difficulty that affects the skills required for reading, writing, and spelling. And I know we always talk about the deficiencies, but it has huge strengths. A lot of the people in the creative world are dyslexic. It comes with this creative mind. It comes with, visualizing, being able to see a bigger picture, being able to see a different way of looking at things. And that different way is actually what changes the world. Imagine if we were all seeing the same thing, the same way, there would be nothing different. The dyslexic mind is so, though it's different, it just brings this new perspective to life. And we just have to do our best to ensure that we can support all dyslexics. Welcome if you've just joined us. Today we're talking to a very interesting person. I know he's going to join very soon, and having conversations around his experiences with dyslexia. I experience dyslexia every day because I see dyslexic individuals all the time. I assess dyslexic children and adults. In fact, the oldest person I've assessed so far is, I think, in the 60s. And he really just wanted to know if all the struggles that he's had all this time was based on dyslexia. So I assess people every day. And I just feel pained about the struggles that they have to go through when it just doesn't have to be that way. When we can do simple things and take simple steps in school that can help, dyslexic minds and dyslexic individuals. And even in the workplace. Dyslexia, it affects about 20% of any population. So 1 in 5 of us is dyslexic. In fact, I'm so sure in Nigeria that number is even higher because we don't have systematic way of identifying dyslexia or remediating it. And so many people fall into reading failure without even knowing that they could have done better. So 1 in 5 of us, 20% of our population is dyslexic. You have 20% of people that have wonderful minds that is going to waste. And we wonder why we're not doing well in this country. Dyslexia must be addressed. It must be understood by everyone. And that's why we're trying to do all that we can to raise awareness. I'm so happy you can join us today. Thank you for making the time. I know it's bang in the middle of the day, and you still found time. It means that you are interested in this topic, and you're trying to find out more, trying to support, and really appreciate this. We're still waiting on our guests to join. But if you have any questions for me, you can pop it in the comment box. I'll be happy to share with you. I run a series called Ask Dr. AD, and very happy to answer any questions that concern dyslexia. Hi, welcome. It's nice to see you today. So, about 2 weeks ago, we had our dyslexia dialogue. Thank you. Hi, Olaide. Thank you. So, what are the common signs of dyslexia? Thank you. I'll be happy to do that. So, dyslexia shows up differently at different life stages. Because dyslexia is who you are, you inherit dyslexia. You can't change being dyslexic. It means that all the signs can show up throughout the lifespan. So, whether you're a little child, or you're a teenager, or you're an adult, or you're an elderly person, you are always dyslexic, and then the signs can be there. So if you're a preschooler, the likely signs in preschool would be that the child has difficulty with alphabets. he has difficulty reading, associating the letters and sounds. Usually, not all the time, but usually they have delayed speech, so they don't quite speak early. You'd find that they babble. The child is 2 years old, probably going on to 3, and still not talking. The parents are getting worried. That's usually one of the signs of dyslexia. Not everyone gets all of the signs, but that's one of the signs. Another one is that the child has difficulty with remembering his alphabet, remembering his letters. He may have difficulty with tying his shoelaces, for instance, might be a little bit clumsy. He would like gadgets and can dismantle any toy or want to find out what is working in a toy or what's the mechanical thing that's making it work. But he wouldn't like to read. He wouldn't like to have anything to do with a book. Doesn't mind if you read a story to him, but he's not really interested in a book. These are some early signs. When he gets into nursery school, then he has difficulty, learning the sounds. Because dyslexia really is sort of like a phonological deficit. That is, the relationship between letters and sounds. So they have difficulty associating that letters and sounds. And that's the same thing that causes them to have delayed speech. Because when you have a baby, he's listening to all of the sounds in language. He's processing those sounds. And then he finds it easy to relate those sounds and then begins to talk. But because that process takes longer, because a dyslexic person has difficulty associating letters and sounds, they find, processing those sounds takes a little longer than usual, and then they have that delayed speech. Then you also have a situation where when the child is also in preschool, he has, his handedness. Sometimes it's like he's using his right hand today and tomorrow he's using his left hand. It's sort of like you're not sure which handedness he is using. He likes to use both his left and right hand. Yes, he might settle down into one, as time goes on, but usually they start out like that as well. And sometimes you find some parents, because the child is left-handed and they really want to change the child to being a right hand, to be right-handed. And we really shouldn't do that, but sometimes those are some of the signs. And then when the child goes into primary school, this is where the signs become escalated, because then the child is finding it difficult to decode words. So he's finding it difficult to break down the words, the sounds in a word. So he would take longer to say cat. He may know the sounds, so he knows it's at, but then to blend that and decode that word becomes a problem. So usually they find decoding difficult, and when they can't decode, then they find, reading the words more fluently even more difficult. So they are slower in reading than their peers. They begin to drop behind their peers when it comes to reading. That's one of the signs. Another one is that the spelling, they have problems with spelling, a lot of problems with spelling. You see, reading is decoding and spelling is encoding. So what happens is they can invert sounds, they can mix up the sounds, so b, p, they sound the same, they mix up the sounds, they mix up words that look the same, like from or for or form, they mix all of those. They also mix up, exactly. Hi. Okay, so I believe that our guest is here and I'm excited. Let me accept the request first and then welcome our guest. Hi, are you there, Mr. Andrews? Hello? What do I do? Awesome. Hi, good afternoon. Nice to see you.
I'm so sorry I
Awesome.
joined late.
I was beginning to get a little worried. Did you get stuck in traffic? I know it's live, but you know how Lagos can be.
Yeah, so
Very nice to see you. Hello.
I'm grateful. I'm great. It's great to be here. I've really been looking forward to this.
Awesome. Let me do a quick introduction. Everyone, guys, listen up. See, this is Mr. Tunji Andrews. He is the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Awabah. Now, that's a fintech company, and he is going to be telling us his journey with dyslexia. Yes, he is dyslexic, and he'll be telling us so much about what he experienced growing up and how he got to where he is today. Like I said, he's the chief executive officer. Can imagine as the head of that organization. Welcome, nice to see you.
Thank you
So,
very much.
Mr. Tunji, tell us a little bit about what you do now first. Let's start from the end and then work our way back. So, tell us a bit about what you do now.
So I lead a team, a group called Awabah, and what we are is a digital pension platform for Africa's workforce. Our goal, our simple goal, is to be able to create the same financial leverage ecosystem that exists around people who work in a 9 to 5, around informal sector workers. So, you know, when you work in a 9 to 5, especially if you're working in a very good organization, you have health insurance, you have pensions, you have access to credit, you have, you know, leverage. You know, when you want to get a mortgage, it's likely that the bank will give you that funding. Informal sector workers do not have this leverage. So we're building that entire ecosystem around them to be able to create it. And we're starting at the basis of pensions. I need to say this for a bit of clarity. What we're doing has never been done before. And we're ultimately seen as crazy for doing it. But I'm here in Abuja, where we received an award from the CBN yesterday for the financial inclusion product for 20. Here's it.
Awesome,
Where we received this
awesome.
award yesterday. So it just goes to show that we are doing something. The entire, you know, financial ecosystem sees how important what we're doing is, even how difficult it is. But yes, we've decided that we're going to make it work, not only for Nigeria, but the entire African continent.
Great. And am I surprised? No. I mean, before you came on, I was talking about dyslexic strengths, and one of it is that thinking outside the box, is that problem solving, that, you know, that is, they are the ones that then become innovative and bring all these innovative ideas. That people think that you're doing something that has not been done before. I'm not surprised. It's a dyslexic strength, you know.
Yes.
And so tell us, when you were growing up now, let's fling back to when you were younger. What was school like for you?
It was terrible. So I remember in primary school coming usually second to the last or third to the last in class every single time. The day I came 16th in primary 5, and that was a huge celebration for me. I still remember that day vividly. I was so excited. I was even happier than the person who came first.
I can
I mean,
imagine.
I was like, whoa. And it was a problem because my primary school teacher, and I think between primary 1 and primary 3, was also my lesson teacher at home. So the same methods, they were not helping in school, it was not helping at home. And relatively everybody around me felt I was dumb. There was a small telltale that I think everybody should have paid attention to, but apparently nobody did, was that irrespective of how badly I did in math, English, and all the other subjects, I always came first in music and fine arts. I can't draw to save my life. I can't, but it was easier for my mind to understand those concepts because they were concepts of art. And because they were concepts of art, I understood them as art. So there was no question in my mind. But I can tell you that there is nobody that went to school with me, any kind of school with me, that looks at me then and looks at me now and is not confused at, the results I have today.
Wow. I mean, I hear these stories. I hear them all the time because I work around dyslexia and dyslexic individuals. And I can imagine what school must have been like for you. What was the take of your teachers then? I mean, what were they saying? Were they just labeling you, giving you names, or what were they doing?
I mean, forget my teachers. At home, I think I came back one school term with my results, and I had done last in almost everything else, but English, but except music and then fine art. And I remember them making fun of me that, he's going to become a musician, which isn't bad today, but at that time it looked like, he was going to be the failure of the lot. And it transcended everywhere I went to. Even in the university, it was regular for the lecturers to make fun of me because I just couldn't grasp anything. I remember one particular examination we had where my mates would pick up random words that were not in the syllabus, and I'd be like, "What? I've never heard of that before." And they were making fun of me because they realized that I had those challenges. So yeah, it was difficult. Everybody around me, forget the teachers. The teachers were just who they were. Everybody around me just felt this person was dumb, and there was nothing we could do to help him. And I think it even made it a lot worse because I couldn't even read the times table. And that was in primary 2, I think. It would be written on the board, right? So the teacher would write all the, 2 times 2, 4, 2, 3, 2 times 3, 6 on the board, right? And he'll say, read it. And everybody would go in, I couldn't. I just could not. I didn't know why my mind was looking at it, but was quarreling with what was on the board, So there was a huge internal, I didn't know what it was at the time. I mean, when I got older, I started to understand it. But, there was an internal conflict of why exactly is it 2 times 2? Okay, what does the correlation of 4 have to do with the previous 2s? And, every other person just took the information straight. Okay, this is what it is, and just went with it. My mind was saying, why exactly is it not 5? Why is it not 13 and a half? Why is it not 1? And yeah, so I think also because in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have voiced out those conflicts, but voicing those conflicts did not help me any less.
Any better?
It did not. It did not, because it made it look like I was adamantly dumb. Not only was I dumb, but I was.
But you were stubbornly dumb in their minds.
Exactly.
Like, we're telling you this is 2 plus 2. You're still questioning why it's 2 plus 2. And that's the
Absolutely.
thing. And that's the mind that changes the world. That's the mind that invents things. That's the mind that is innovative. And yet we cannot see that. You see, we can't see that unless we question the way things are, it's never going to change. So I can't even imagine for you, because it's one thing to have teachers do their, give the pressure and all of that at school. But then at home and everyone around you, how did you surmount this? So what did you build around yourself? How did this not affect your self-esteem, or did it?
It did. It did. I still can't function in large crowds. Wherever I go, even if I am the person who is supposed to be speaking, and anybody that has ever seen me in any speaking engagements would know this. Once I speak, I'm out. It's not because I have somewhere else to go to. I just can't operate in large crowds. Um, it 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 made me an approval addict for a very long time. Um, Always seeking approval because I just didn't feel there was anything worth it on my inside. I mean, I was dumb, so what's the use? So I was always looking for any little approval, and of course, it meant that I got into very abusive relationships. I mean, friends, romantic relationships also. Um, it did a lot in terms of how I grew, how I expressed myself. It did a lot in terms of how I took conflict also. So because I internally felt I deserved to be treated that way, I generally do not complain when people treat me bad. I just decide to walk away. You get so it's and even till now, it you would rarely see me and someone in a heated verbal argument. You know, I would just
Rather
walk
just
away.
walk away, walk away.
I'll just
And,
walk
and
away.
this is the thing. We talk about the deficiencies with dyslexia, but we don't usually even look at the mental health issue, the psychological issues, and what it leaves with the individual. We're giving them names every day. We're calling them all kinds of things. We're bullying them emotionally. We're putting them down. And of course, their self-esteem is going to take the bashing for it. And I can say it. For someone that is even introverted, it's even worse. So now it is worse. It's worse. And you can see it go through, the problems can go through, like you said, even some of your relationships, you've had those problems. So what do you do now? Because now I know how you work, but how do you work with your team? Are you more understanding of other people's deficiencies? What has that done to you as a person? I know internally, you stay away from people as much as possible. You've had enough. You want, approval and all of that. But then working with other people now, you have staff that that work for your organization. How do you relate with them? The understanding that you have.
So I think one of the biggest problems I have now that I just started to think of recently was that because I never built the muscle of conflict, and it is a muscle to be able to have healthy conflict. So I do not agree with your point. It meant that I allowed a lot of inadequate behavior in my organization for I think the first 12 months to 18 months until I had to then confront myself first of all and say this is unhealthy, this is going to ruin your organization. You should be able to call out bad behavior. But what people don't realize is that emotions are also muscles. The more you deal with emotions, the more you are able to learn to handle it the next time instead of just walking away from, so because I've always built this sense that, instead of confronting the person, I tend to make excuses for the person. So I mean, it's a weird, and it all comes from that place. I just try, because hey, you first have to make excuses for your parents. Hey, they don't hate me. It's just because I was dumb. So you can't blame them, right? So you tend to grow with this. So you see somebody do something wrong, you always create an excuse for the person. You always create a mental scenario why the person did what they did. But sometimes people are just terrible people. There's no.
Absolutely, and we just really need to call out bad behavior. But I see where you're coming from. Sometimes you've taken so much bashing yourself. It's like you just continue to make excuses. I mean, if people make you feel like you were dumb. So, but then, How did you discover that you were dyslexic? That all of these problems you were having in school was based on, was as a result of dyslexia. How did you discover you were dyslexic?
All right, so I went for a course outside Nigeria where it was a course on macroeconomics. It was a standalone course of macroeconomics, and I went for the course, and for the first time in my life, I understood a lecture. Now, understand what I'm saying. I was about 32 maybe 31, 32 at the time. For the first time in my life, I understood a lecture. I didn't get it. I didn't understand why I understood it. Because normally I wouldn't understand. I would just sit in class and, not get anything. But this time I understood it and I was confused, and I felt, oh, maybe whatever was wrong with my brain has
It
fixed
fixed.
itself. So I went on a learning spree at that point. I just started reading more. I struggle with reading, but I just wanted to learn more. And I spoke to one of the lecturers in the university, and I said, you guys, your teaching is great here. That this is the first time in my life that I actually was able to grasp. And then he said, now we're good, but we're not that good. That, are you sure there's nothing else? And I said, no, I'm fine. And he said, okay, that, there's a counselor on campus that I could go speak to the person. And I spoke with the counselor, and the counselor said, that he would like me to take some tests. And it came back that I was dyslexic. And it was weird. And note that I was in my 30s at this time. And it was so shocking that it now made so much sense that everything I'd gone through was because I was learning the wrong way. There was nothing wrong with me. It was the system to which I was learning with. And, it was really ridiculous. So after that point, I recalibrated how I viewed the world, and then I started to realize how I could understand certain things. So while everybody, for instance, the 2 times 2 thing I said, while everybody, is easy memorizing the 2 times table, I have a system where I know the entire 2 times table, I know the entire 5 times table, and I know in between. So, for instance, if you were to ask me what 7 times 8 is, I know what 7 times 7 is, and then I would just add one more 7 to it. Now, my mind will add it probably quicker than you would remember if you were not dyslexic, but still,
Absolutely.
it's my system. It's my system. So I started to realize that my mind had to have a way around information, so much so that if I understood it, I could teach it.
Absolutely.
So I went from there. I then studied economics, went on to
Wow.
teach economics, went on to become a senior economist at a few organizations, worked with the Statistician General of the Federation of Nigeria. Between 2013 and 2016, I was directly, involved with CPI computations for Nigeria.
Oh my days. This is someone we thought was dumb.
It's confusing, right? With CPI computations for Nigeria, that is inflation numbers. The economic growth and recovery document, I was in the economic team that built that. So yes, we've gone on to do a lot of things, right? In that regard. After that point, I found myself, wanting to go on radio and TV to teach about financial issues because I realized I knew it now. I wanted to teach everyone. I was like, everybody must understand, So that put me on radio and TV for about 10 years until I stopped that in 2020? or 2020, and then we started Awabah. So basically, the general thought for me is I pretty much wasted school in Nigeria. It was wasted. There was no reason I went to school, to be honest. And it could have just been helped if one of the teachers just realized that that thing that makes him understand fine arts and music, is it possible we could replicate it in everything else?
Oh, my days, tell them. Oh.
But they wanted me to learn math the
way that they wanted to teach it.
It was ridiculous.
Oh my God. You're tugging at my heart as you're speaking. You're tugging at my heart. Now, let me hold it for a minute and say, now imagine you're Minister for Education. What could you change? What would you change about schooling and education in Nigeria?
All right. So one of the things I've been able to see a lot since that time is the spectrum of dyslexia. The spectrum of other learning disabilities. I don't know why they call them learning disabilities though, but one of the
learning differences.
Exactly. One of the things I've come to see is almost every child learns differently. Almost every child learns differently. So the way one child learns is different from the way another child learns. To give a one-size-fits-all learning pattern is to try to make at least 3/4 of your economy dumb.
Exactly.
They were not dumb, you are trying to make them dumb. Because you are trying to force them to learn in a way that is not natural to them. It's like asking a fish to climb a tree. It's not going to do it. And you're going to now start blaming the fish for not being able to climb.
Absolutely, making him feel it's dumb.
Easy. It's easy, just climb. But the fish is not meant to climb a tree. So for me, I think it's the basis. It's not really, the what is learned so much of how it is learned. It is how the learning is the thing. So for instance, one of the things I quickly realized after my Derby experience was you just needed to explain the policy to me. I would go and teach it.
Exactly.
I don't need to go and study the course. I just need to just explain it to me. And I get it. And then my mind starts working in the scenarios and starts saying, oh, okay, that means if this happens. And that's the way my mind works. So it's like, oh, okay.
That is how the dyslexic mind works.
So then this would be like this, then this comes to this. Oh, then if you put this, and then I go out and teach it. And pretty much it's been the bedrock of everything I've done in my professional life. It's been me teaching. And I still tell people that after we've done what we are doing with Awabah, I want to go back and teach. I want to lecture. I want to be able to teach somewhere, probably economics, but I really want to teach. I really want to teach.
So you can imagine from someone we thought was dumb, what do you think that, what can we do with teachers? Because school is the first place really where children begin this whole learning journey. Aside from the little things we teach them at home, but what can we say to teachers? What should we do, for teachers, with teachers, to make them better?
I think the first thing any teacher must have is empathy. I think, and you see, it's why my company got this. Because the bedrock of everything we do is built on empathy. Trying to understand the situation from the perspective of the person that is involved, as against forcing our own solutions on them. So you see, in the world of financial inclusion in Nigeria, where we are trying to get more people into the banking system, for so many years we've been forcing how we feel financial inclusion should be on people who don't need it. So what's the use of a bank account to a Mama Bisi? Mama Bisi keeps her money in a colo. If she wants to send money to her child, she'll tell Mama Risi, who is traveling to Ibadan, give my
Drop
child
me
money to
phone,
Ibadan.
take this money.
She doesn't need your bank account. So you are forcing her to be financially included just by the basis of financial inclusion. Empathy will tell you that she needs other things. So if you come from the point of empathy to Mama Bisi and then you're able to solve Mama Bisi's need, Mama Bisi will get financially included. So we all win.
Exactly.
A teacher that is not able to look at teaching children from this perspective is not fit to be a teacher. Forget all the other skills that are required. If the teacher is not able to be patient enough to look at the fact that this child is not just hyperactive for being hyperactive's sake, the child just can't sit still. You know, it's just a thing that the child can't sit still. Then there is a bit of empathy. You start to realize that, okay, this child needs activity. This child is easily stimulated. So we need to keep this child engaged. As against telling the child, you just jump around too much. You are just a very naughty child. Just sit down, and then you then build more, emotional imbalance into the child. Every teacher needs empathy. If you do not have empathy, you are not meant to be a teacher. It's just plain and simple to my mind.
I agree with you, and you brought a different perspective, because we always say, oh, teach teachers, give teachers information about this, information about that. But at the end of the day, we need teachers that understand what is going on. I tell teachers all the time, look, no child wants to be the last in class. No child wants to be the one that you are calling out for not doing well. No child wants to be the one that doesn't know how to read. There is something going wrong. There is something up. Can you try to find out what is going on? And until you can put yourself in that child's position, you can't help the child. So I totally agree with you on empathy. And it's not only teachers, parents, employers, we all have to have more empathy. We all must be more understanding of other people's differences. This is really just speaking to me right now. So now you found out you were dyslexic and you were like, oh, so this is what it is. This is what it has been. How do you work around your difficulties now? I can see you using all your dyslexic strength. Empathy is a dyslexic strength. Problem solving is a dyslexic strength. Visualizing is a dyslexic strength. Being intuitive is a dyslexic strength. Being creative. So I can see you using all your dyslexic strength. How do you work around a difficulty? All right, you have difficulty reading. What are some of the things that you do? Because, and I'm sorry, before you answer that, because we're saying, look, the skills we need for the future of work, school and work, are those soft skills. There's always going to be machines that will read for us as we go forward. All those mundane things that we do in school, this other skill set is what we need. But so if we let dyslexics fall through the cracks in school, we have a huge problem. But how do you now, as an adult, work around the deficiencies that you have?
So it was, I think the first thing I started to do was to find my comfort zones and things that worked for me. So first of all, I can't read. I can read, but I can't. So a book like this, right? I bought this on my way to Abuja. I would like to read it, but I know I won't, right? And this is the simple reason, right? For anybody that is not dyslexic on this call, this is what happens when I open a book like this. I start reading the first two sentences, this first two lines, and then between line 2 and line 3, something starts to move. I don't know how it happens, and then line 4, a word gets missing, and then I'm stuck on line 2 for like another 3 minutes. It doesn't work for me. Plus, even if I get to understand it, or if it goes smoothly, it doesn't happen all the time. That don't get me wrong, but once it starts happening, I generally just have to put the book down. But I found out that I like to hear, so I found audiobooks.
Awesome. Awesome.
So I use an app called Audible. Audible is an amazing app.
Amazing.
Don't use it on Apple, because I think if you're in Nigeria, Apple Pay in Nigeria has issues. But on Android, it's fantastic. I buy a book and I listen to it. Sorry, I'm in a hotel and room services cleaning the room, so you might hear the vacuum cleaner. Anyways, the Audible is fantastic for me, and I tend to read constantly just by listening. And it works better for me because it's like the person narrating is painting pictures in my head. So I'm just getting the concept, and it's helping me make decisions quicker. Also, in things about my handwriting is terrible. Uh, plus, I realized that I was just born at the very right time when computers came about, right? So I tend to easily want to type out stuff. Also, if I'm going to have to read a document, it's best you print it out for me and give it to me physically. And then I use a pen to go through it. But I have just realized that I am different from everybody, right? So all these things might sound like very little things to you, but they are huge things to me in the context of how I see expression. So I do everything from that perspective. I also find the gym as one of the places that gives me greatest uh, therapeutic strength. But I tend to find that I'm finicky about things in the gym. I don't like to see people not put things back in order. I don't like to see people just put their bare bodies on the gym seats. And because I realize that they don't see it as a problem and I can't make them feel it's a problem, I just tend to try and walk around my own situations, right? So it's a bit of realizing that, at this point, I was the one that, earlier I was the one that people felt sorry for. And now I kind of feel sorry for every other person because I'm like, you really can't see that, can you? But it's fine. If you can't see that this should be orderly, then it's fine. I would just, I would just stand on this side and not disturb you. So I've also come to realize that I'm a bit different from everybody else. And I tend to embrace that. When I just discovered I was dyslexic, I used to want to intellectually challenge everybody. So much so that I was always, going up against the finance minister at the time. Every time she said something, because I understood what she was talking about. It wasn't like last time, when I was, so, but I've come to realize that with great power comes great responsibility. So the fact that you can see it doesn't mean you explain it to everybody.
All
But it
the
also
time.
means that, yes, it also means that you're going to see things a bit clearer than most people will. You will see when people try to use you, because your mind will paint that picture very vividly to you. It's the gift that keeps on giving, and sometimes you don't want it to give you those kind of gifts. But yeah, so it's also just realizing that you're part of an ecosystem of people, and you have to function within. So yeah, it's 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 fun navigating through it because you now understand why you're like that. But I think for children that do not know why they are different from their peers, it can be torture.
It
It can be
can,
torture.
and
It
it
can.
can be so much torture. So much so that, I mean, there's a huge number of dyslexics that are incarcerated. People they've done research on those that are incarcerated, and they find that a huge number is dyslexic because If you don't do well in school and you drop out of school, then what are you going to do? You're not employable, then you get into crime. So it's a vicious cycle that we have to do something. But before I let you go, because we're turning around towards the top of the hour, you talked about something that happens when you are reading or when you attempt to read. You flip a book open and then some of the letters begin to move. And actually people think that it's not happening, it can't be true, or how is that possible? Well, very much so. What that is vision stress. And vision stress actually causes blurring, letters moving around, clumping together. And there's simple things that we can do. In fact, when I do assessments now, and I throw in a vision stress test, nearly 90% of people that have dyslexia have vision stress. In fact, some people feel that dyslexia is a vision problem. It's not. And there's simple things that we can do, if only we knew in time. And some of the things you can do is just take an overlay and put over the paper, and the letters will stabilize. Now imagine you knew that when you were in primary 1 or primary 2, or you just had colored glasses and everything stabilizes. There's so much that is going on in schools and with children that we don't know. But like you said, empathy first. Just understand that people are different and they have different skill sets and there are different intelligences. It's not just one. Can we recognize that people know other things that we don't? So, few minutes to go now. Thank you for all of these insights.
Olayide asked a question here, and I think it's a very important question. I think it's a she. She says, how has seeing yourself from this perspective of strength affected the way others see you? So Olayide, let me say this, right? And I'm now brilliant, right? I've always been, but now I know I'm brilliant. And I know that my IQ is above average. I say this with no humility because, I mean,
you're allowed, but you've gone through hell and back. And
I say
it's
this with no humility.
If you have above average intelligence, take it.
So, but one thing I now realize is that by just the fact of being above average, you realize that you're smarter than most people in most rooms. And at first, when I realized this, I used to always want to challenge every stupid thing said in the room. But no, honestly, and people.
I know where you're coming from.
It's weird. It's weird. I'll tell you a very weird story. So I told you I was on the team that created the ERGP. I was probably a thorn in their flesh. I was the most junior economist in the room. In fact, I'd barely become an economist when I was in that room. And everybody else in the room were, the HOD of this economics, this university, HOD of economics, that university, some of our top economists in Nigeria. And I kept arguing. And I said, no. And I was right, actually. I was right through every argument. I was like, no, that's not true. This is wrong. You are, because I felt we were in a room of intellectuals, so I could, But here's what I've learned after what Olayide is that, and I said it earlier, with great power comes great responsibility. That and you have empathy sometimes says you don't necessarily have to talk. If it is not going to harm the process, and even if it is going to harm the process, there are better ways to do it than argue. I tell a friend who is also dyslexic and tends to be a bit more intellectually arrogant than myself. I say, why don't you simple mind them? When I say simple mind is help them get to the conclusion. They are not seeing it, but help them. Talk them through it. As against dumb, you are doing the same thing people did to you. You are basically
exactly. That's what I was going to say. It's the same thing they did to you. You're coming back to do.
Exactly. So it's like, why not help them get to the point of, understanding what is going on, the conversation. And that has been a very, so I say this because I realize that, when you then realize that you're not dumb and you realize what dyslexia is and you realize how quickly your brain works, you start to become a little arrogant with your knowledge. And that is not necessarily a good thing. That is not necessarily a good thing.
Absolutely. If you're just joining us, oh my gosh, you've missed so much of our conversation today. Don't worry, we have this recorded, so I'm sure you can go back to watch it. It's still our Dyslexia Talk show, and I'm here with Mr. Tunji Andrews, the CEO of Awabah, a fintech company. So before I let you go, tell me, every dyslexic person has a superpower. What is yours?
Math. It's crazy, right? Math. I can't believe how easy I understand math now. Because I now have a pattern. I have a system. And if you look at the world is built on math. Every single thing is built on math. The way people interact, the way people work, the way people associate is built on math. It is my superpower right now. And just because wait, I think even knowing this is part of being dyslexic.
It
Honestly,
is.
it's just being able to know that people are numbers driven. People will align in certain numbers, um, and I now pay attention to probability. So if I'm walking towards you and I look past you, the probability that you would walk to the other side is almost one.
It is. If
It's
you,
almost
I'm going to move.
is going to move. So this kind of things kind of just help you, navigate the world. But like I said, because it is you now clearly understand it, it can also become, because if you look at some of the evil geniuses in the world,
Oh, I think.
that I dare to say that the pain of knowing that the manipulations they put into effect are things that your mind can see when you are dyslexic is is that problem of knowing that with great power comes great responsibility also. So at the end of the day, it's my superpower, and it's also helped me to be one thing. And it's people just generally don't always understand it. I don't have a problem being number two. I don't have a problem being number two, as long as both our interests are being served.
That's
I
fine.
could be number 10 for all I care. I'm not one of those people that wants to be number one. Usually I am, but I think it's because I don't care about being number one.
There you go. There you go. As long as, like you said, your needs are being met and that's what matters the most at the end of the day. And then coming from last in class in primary school, hey, I've been there. You know, the top of the hour, I really must thank you so much for your time today. You spent all of this time speaking with us. One last word, very quickly, 30 seconds, we're done already. To parents, what would you say to parents? You have a child that's dyslexic, what do you say to parents?
There's nothing wrong with any child. Every child is built brilliant. Every child is born brilliant. You are the one that holds them back. So if you want your children to be the best they can be built to be.
I think we lost that.
Did you get me? Please, I need to say this. I must say this.
Oh, final word.
Am I back
Yes, please say this
now?
again.
Yes, yes, yes. I said every child was born brilliant. Every child was born with, every child was born a genius. What happens is that we hold them back. We as parents, we as teachers. For your child to be the very best they can be, teach your child the way the child was created to be. Don't try and compare them with the kid next door. Don't try and compare them with the child that is across the road. As a matter of fact, the child coming first in class is no indication of the child's ability to function in society in the future. Has zero capability, zero correlations with it. So build it. I'll tell you this, I want to say this quickly before I go. While we're in a technology age where children are technology this, technology that, I made sure that my children played. I made sure that they had the swings, the slides, the running, the bicycle. I made sure they had that full environment, that full expression to play. Now they're getting into technology, but I made sure that they were able to express themselves in that area first. Allow your children be who they're supposed to be. Please, I beg you. Please, I beg you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Oh, what a wonderful time. What a wonderful time. Thank you so much. And all the best of what you're doing out there. We wish you continued success. To everyone that joined us today, thank you so much. You take care of yourself now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Gosh, I don't know how to turn this thing off.